Thanks so much for being here. It's so good to see your bright and shining faces. I just want to take a second to introduce myself, let the team introduce yourselves before we start diving into the nitty gritty, because there are some folks on here that I've never met before, because this is a joint call between all of the CCAN universe. So for those who don't know me, hi, my name is Elle. I use either she or they pronouns. I'm calling in from what is now called Richmond, Virginia, on formerly Powhatan, or currently Powhatan lands. And I am the Central Virginia grassroots organizer for CCAN. I'm really thrilled to have y'all here, big believer in relational organizing, and for y'all to begin that journey. So I'm going to kick it over to Holly to introduce yourself.
Hey y'all, Holly here. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the West Virginia organizer. I'm calling in from Hillsborough, West Virginia, on Monaton land. And yeah, really glad to be here. And I'll pop it over to Xander.
Hello, I am Xander. I use he and him pronouns. I'm the Northern Virginia organizer. And I can ask Mustafa to introduce himself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Mustafa. I'm the field director for the Chesapeake Climate Action Network. I use he, him pronouns, and I live in DC on Piscataway lands. And I'm going to pass it to Emily.
Thanks so much. Hi, I'm Emily. I'm the Maryland Grassroots Coordinator for Chesapeake Climate Action Network. I use she, her pronouns, and I am in Greenbelt, which is also on Piscataway land.
Yay, you got to know all of us. We'd like to know you. Even though it is a smaller group, I think just for time and efficacy's sake, if y'all could throw your name, pronoun, well, not your name, your pronouns, where you're calling in from into the chat. What will also be helpful is if you rename yourself according to your area. Those who organize you know where y'all are generally from, but it'll be neat for further practice later, and also just to get to know familiar faces in your area here. But so moving forward into the nitty gritty, some of the things just throw in the chat. Yeah, and if you feel so inclined, we can have this populate the chat as we go through. Is what has brought you to this space today? What is exciting for you about the idea of relational organizing? Have you even heard of it before? You can populate that in, and we can see where other folks are coming from as we move forward. But just to keep on keeping on, as we are hearing what y'all are hoping to get out of this training, what is bringing you into this space today, we want to let you know where we're coming from. Intentionality is really important when we're undertaking any sort of organizing activity. We should have an idea of what we want to do and how we want to get there. And so our goals for this training are trifold. The first is just to learn the elements of an effective one-on-one, which is our foundation for relational organizing. This is just a conversation that happens between two people, and we're going to figure out what are the parts of it that make it an organizing relationship as opposed to just chit-chatting with a buddy. Then we're going to learn about, there are a couple of different kinds of one-on-ones. We're going to be focusing on recruitment ones, that initial one, but we'll briefly talk about what other things exist as sort of a preview for trainings to come, for what the future can hold for you. We're gonna get some practice in with a buddy, hopefully in your area, put those skills to the test. And then from there, we can think about how we want to transfer this skill, now that we've practiced, now that we know what it is and what it looks like and all the parts that make it up, into the big bad world, and how we're going to use it to affect positive change in our areas. We'll keep on going. In the vein of intentionality, this is our agenda. So we're, as we achieve these goals, here are the things that we're going to be keeping in mind is, number one, most conversations, organizing conversations, are story related in some way. So we're going to talk about what a story of self is very briefly. We had a training about this in the past, and we'll send out some resources again to remind y'all, or if you haven't seen it before, inform y'all. So the importance of the story of self. We're going to talk about why we build a relationship, what purpose does relational organizing serve, what do one-on-ones serve as, again, getting into those elements, those different kinds. And then we're going to talk about how we bring all of these things together. We talked about the story of self. How do we not be super weird and interviewee when we're having conversations? How do we make it feel natural? How are we forming like connections with folks in an organizing space? And then we're going to talk about what does this serve? So, you know, previewing how this can help you build a volunteer team, how this will lead to other sorts of one-on-ones. So we got a lot ahead, and y'all are tired of hearing my voice. So I'm gonna throw it over to Emily to start getting into the meat of it.
Thank you so much, Elle. And also just for our organizers, we are about 5 minutes behind schedule, so I will try to be brief. First, I would like to hear from everybody. Oh, and I think we need next slide. What do we need to start organizing, and what does it mean to start organizing? So just seeing what do folks think? What does it mean to do organizing? And anybody you can answer that in the chat, or you can raise your hand. And I already know what all the staff thinks, so looking at some of y'all. What does organizing mean? What do we need to do organizing? Andrea, that is right. That is really right. Having a common action to take, gathering. I really like that word, gathering. Solving a problem. Yeah. So we are really getting to connecting different groups of people, but that have a shared goal. This is all very correct. I'm glad to see these answers. Hopefully it does seem a little bit obvious, but it is something that's worth thinking about. What does it mean to organize, and what are the components of organizing? And it's really having a goal and having relationships that are going to get you to that goal. So that is, I think we are all pretty much on the same page here about what organizing is. So of course, when we are organizing, that means that we are using our relationships to make asks and get to our goal. But I do want to also hear, how does it feel when somebody asks you to do something and you don't know anything about them, where they're coming from, their values, or anything like that? They're just making a straight ask of you with no other context. How does that feel for you? Confusing? Uneasy? Challenging? Abrupt? Unwelcome? Yeah. That's all, I think, really, really right. Transactional is another word that I've heard a lot. Kind of like, right, we don't like to be approached, most of us, from like sales cold calls, right? That's an example of where somebody's reaching out to us to make a big ask, and just to see, if we want to make a transaction. And in some cases, not to say that sales is a bad thing, and sometimes there's a place for having those kind of quicker interactions, but it doesn't really build the relationship, right? It can feel just very one-sided. And when we're talking about doing organizing also is longer term. So we want to make sure that we have some sort of foundation to keep having conversations, to keep growing together. And so that is really where our relational organizing comes in. And so before we're asking other people to put themselves out there, we also kind of need to put ourselves out there. We need folks to understand who we are, why we care in the first place, and otherwise we can risk having a purely transactional relationship. So next slide. Great. So all of us as organizers, as CCANers, we're confronted with a lot of problems every day that require action, right? We're here together to organize on this, in this case, on climate change, but it might be about all kinds of things. I'm sure that's not the only thing you work on. So when we are thinking about solving a problem, we tap into both our heads and our hearts when we're trying to figure out what to do. Our head is really good about thinking our way towards action. So that's your nuts and bolts, kind of logistics, that kind of thing. It tells us how to do something and uses the language of strategy. Our heart is very good at feeling our way to action. It tells us why we should do something, and it's usually using stories. And using those two things together, right, is really how we mobilize ourselves into action. So just really quick, another quick survey here. Who here, and you can definitely put this in the chat, staff definitely welcome to participate in this one. Who here thinks that they go with their heads first? In terms of when you're trying to solve a problem, do you think through the logistics and all of that, or are you more of a heart first person, like what's motivating me, the why, and I'll think about the how later? Who do we have in the room? I see a heart. Heart driven. Ella's definitely full of heart. I am definitely a head first person. I tend to think a lot about, I get analysis paralysis, and definitely am very like into that. But then when it comes to like actually explaining my feelings, that's not always the most intuitive thing for me. So we have it, but it takes all types. It really, really does. So we really need to think about how to take that, to take meaningful action. We really need to bring those both together. If we remain in our feelings and we don't have a strategy, people are going to end up feeling really demotivated because we're not working towards our goals in a way that can be measured, and it kind of includes measures of success, right? On the other hand, I'm definitely very guilty of this. We can analyze a plot problem till we're blue in the face, but if we aren't actually in touch with the why, we're not going to be focused on, having the energy to actually take action. So through storytelling, or what we also call public narrative, we can get people to feel something by sharing both why we care and also how we can address the problems at hand, so that we can move people to take action with us. So we're not going to get too deep into public narrative training today. We're going to have a separate kind of deeper public narrative training to hone in on the full story of public narrative. But today we're going to talk about the importance of story and connecting in building relationships with people in one-on-ones. So we are going to actually take a moment to work through a worksheet. And I do want to make sure that I have, yeah, there we go. It has already been pasted in the chat. We're going to take 5 minutes right now. So open up that worksheet. Can I get a thumbs up when you have the worksheet open? Just in.
It says you need to request access.
Oops, I'll fix that.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Let's see. Okay.
Okay, I'm starting to see some people in it. But that
Yeah, everybody should have access to it now.
Yeah, that works.
Great. So we're actually going to do this worksheet in just a moment. And it's broken up into 3 parts. And today we're really focusing more on story of self. So we first, I think, I'm gonna pass it to Xander to talk about one-on-ones. Is that right? I'm sorry.
It's not. We're gonna get people into the worksheet right now.
Okay,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I got a little
Yeah.
confused. Okay,
you're totally good. Yeah, if folks can just take 5 minutes right now. You can make a copy of this worksheet, or you can just download it for yourself. And we just want for folks to start thinking about what are the things that are bringing you to this work, like as sort of specific as possible. And you know, what matters to you about, you know, what matters to your community about this work, like, and what values that you share with others in your community that are bringing you to this work, and why you're coming to this work now. So you can just think through those specific questions and just take a few minutes to do it. And this, you don't have to have perfect answers. And really, this is just like bullet points to help sort of center your story and your values and why you're in this fight right now. As then we'll transition into talking through the relational meetings. So this will help build towards that. Do folks have any questions just about the worksheet? Yes, yeah, focus on the first page. So let's do that. Let's do that for 5 minutes, and we'll come back at 6:50. Well, we'll come back to the agenda at 6:55. But you can just folks can hang out in the space here and work on it. And if folks have any questions, just shout those out.
I have a question. Who is gonna see this? Who will this be shared with? Like, are we gonna report back for everyone, or how personal should I get?
Absolutely, yeah. So this is you. Well, this worksheet is for yourself, and you can choose with your own discretion in your one-on-one practice what you would like to share. And folks should start wrapping up, maybe another 30 seconds. All right, Sander, I think whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. Thanks everyone for thinking through your stories. I am going to tease you all. I'm going to skip this slide and you can read about it later because we're a couple minutes behind. So there are more types of one-on-ones. They all have to do with relationships. You can learn about it in the slides and we're happy to talk with you about it later. But to think through the importance of relationships, I'm going to take a second and ask you all, who here is today because someone you know, someone you have a relationship with, invited you to be here? Okay, good. JP says yes, which is good because I talked to him about this. And it looks like, I'm trying to scroll through, but I believe that many people are here because you know someone on the call and have a relationship with them. And that's what we see time and time again in our work, is that this type of organizing, relational organizing, it works. And it's a really key step throughout our organizing process. It starts when we are building a team of people to come do an action, and it continues as we mobilize people, spread the word, debrief our actions, and think through what's next for ourselves. So to think through some of the examples of this, have any of you ever attended a large march or an action and come away from it unsure of what was next? Yeah, JP says yes, Kate says yes. Yeah, that is, Andrea says yes. That that's an example of what we want to move beyond in this work. We want to imagine a world and build a team of volunteers that are able to go to large actions and know one another and have a relationship with one another. And that's really what we're striving to do with our work, because we believe that people are the source of our power. We believe that we need relationships, and that's the key to our model of organizing. So thinking through that example of going to a rally, you may meet someone at the rally. You may have a short interaction with them. You could like their sign. They could say you have a cute kid, whatever it is. There's lots of different ways to build a relationship. That's one of them. You could also meet people at a meeting. But we want to really hone in on today the one-on-one as a way to build a relationship. And we're doing this because it works. And while it's important to talk with people and build relationships at public events, we also want to really think through how you can get this really important tool, the recruitment one-on-one, in your toolbox, so that as you meet people, you can get their contact information and apply what you're going to learn here today to follow up with them and build a base of people that are going to start to recognize one another and take shared actions together that's rooted in a relationship. And Mustafa's going to go through how that really happens.
All right, thank you so much, Sander. If we could go to the next, we can actually just go to the next slide after that. Great. So, so there are really 5 key elements that I think about with a really good one-on-one, or that make up a really good one-on-one. Think of these less as like steps in a specific order, but more as like a framework for what a one-on-one should include. Of course, a one-on-one is not an interview. It's a two-way conversation. So make sure, right, that you're sharing about yourself, as well as asking good open-ended questions, and actively listening. So for attention, in today's world, it's just like really easy to get distracted. So just make sure when you are meeting with somebody that the both of you are in a place where you could give each other your full attention. Sometimes for me, like I just turn my phone like face down so I don't see like any notifications. I just try to block out anything that for me what might be a distraction. And so you just should be cognizant of what might be distracting to you. As this should be a very focused conversation. And number 2 is purpose. So I think as Xander or somebody else alluded to before, folks may have been in meetings where you're not sure why you're meeting with this person or why you're in this particular group meeting. It's not a great place to be in or not a great thing to feel. So you spend a lot of the time wondering, what do they want? I think this is also alluding to Kate's feedback about how to be like asked to get plugged into things. So it's really important to actually not hide the ball when we're going into a one-on-one meeting with somebody. We should be very clear about the purpose. I'd like to meet with you because I want to know why you care about this issue, and I want to hear about your ideas about what you can do to help. I want to talk to you about what like the specific campaign and opportunities to get plugged into that. So be really, really clear about the purpose here. Number 3 is exploration. So this is where you integrate the work that you did earlier on your stories. That was just a taste of it. And you're exploring each other's values, your stories. You're here to just not just to understand what you both care about, but why. And so you can share a condensed version of your story, ask open-ended questions to hear their story, and really practice very active listening. So that's exploration. And then number 4 is exchange. So this can be an exchange just of resources, ideas, information, skills, and perhaps most valuable of all, an exchange of time. This is an offering either of your time or laying the context for how the person that you're meeting with, you think that their passions or their skills could be lended to the effort that you're trying to get them plugged into. And then making a commitment. So a successful one-on-one ends with a specific commitment. And commitments don't just have to be about signing petitions, right, or showing up to an action. You can make a commitment of time to meet again. Maybe you thought you had a really good one-on-one and you're like not exactly sure how to get the person plugged into the specific work or how the both of you can work together on the things that you're both interested in. And so you want to come back and have another conversation and continue building the relationship. You can just ask for a commitment to have another one-on-one to continue to build and explore together. So these are this is the framework from which we have these relational meetings, otherwise known as one-on-ones.